Hi, this is Kate Olson with Embrace Change with Kate, and I am a hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, life coach, and Reiki master, and the host of Embrace Change with Kate on Embrace Change Radio. And I'm here today with Kathleen Cavender, and we're going to do a soul talk. That's a conversation on a topic that we both have an interest in, getting inspired. Kathleen, I think, is probably one of the most creative people I've come across. She is creative in just about every aspect you can think of, music and art and writing. And I connected with her from my group, Creative Friends, when she mentioned something about writing a book on creativity. And so I was curious to find out more about it. So I said I'd like to talk to her, and she said, okay, let's do it. And so we had a pretty long conversation. And so I thought she'd be a good person to talk to about getting inspired, or inspiration and staying inspired. I don't think you can really stay inspired, but getting inspired again. So I'm going to let Kathleen introduce herself. Hi, Kathleen.
Hey, Kate. Thanks for having me. Yeah, inspiration. Well, first, let me just kind of introduce myself. Yeah, I was born and raised on the eastern side of Washington State. I'm a fourth-generation professional artist, and so I was raised around the arts. My great-grandfather supported a family of 12 on his art alone in London at the turn of the century. And it's just all flowed from there. My grandmother sold art supplies, and when she saw that I had the gift, she kept me fully loaded with art supplies. And I tell parents, if you have a child that shows a passion and interest at all in the arts, just keep them loaded with supplies, because they'll do the rest. It's really 90% passion and 10% talent, in my opinion. It's the passion that drives the talent. And you can have all the talent in the world and no passion for it at all, and it's going to sit there dormant. And so I decided this past year to write a book based on some of those thoughts and opinions that I have about creativity. It's called Creativity for Mere Mortals, Unearthing the Dormant Artist Within. And I tell some stories about myself and my family. My ancestors have a lot of great stories to share, and so I feel honored to be the conduit to transfer those stories to the public. From there, I paint. I'm in my studio. It's just, it's the corner of a room. I've had all kinds of studios. My last studio was immense and had room for lots of students, and I love teaching. I do teach plein air painting, which is painting outdoors. Music. I'm a jazz singer. And it all kind of really feeds on itself, all of these different interests in the arts. And I don't think I'm anything unusual, really. I have other friends who are artists who express themselves in different forms: music, art, writing, poetry. There's a lot of history of artists in the past who, Da Vinci, who cross over into different realms of creativity, including the sciences and mathematics. And there's a lot of study that's been done on that. There's some really great TED Talks about it. In fact, I wrote some notes down. There's this Tim Harford, and he talks about artists who cross-train. I guess that's the word I was looking for, cross-train, like Twyla Tharp and Da Vinci and Michael Crichton, Einstein. They delved into all forms of art and found that when they get stuck or they get bored with one genre, they will, flip over to another. And some people might think that's a lack of commitment, but really what you find is that one art form will inspire another. And so I have no problem. I used to have a problem with it, but I have no problem with being an artist and a musician and a writer,
Yes, I think you're right. There are a lot of people who do multiple different creative things. And in fact, I myself am a dabbler in many things. But I think the people who don't do that or don't express themselves, haven't found their creativity, are more the ones that find it unusual and
Sure.
also find it hard to get inspired.
Sure.
So,
I want to just touch on that a little bit, if I may.
yeah.
I have done some creativity retreats and given some creativity workshops, and I just want to tell a short story about. I had a group of, and we're all women, and I asked those to raise their hand if they didn't believe they had a creative bone in their body, and to my surprise, it's probably about 10% of the room. And so I asked them to stand, and then being women and mothers mostly, I asked them if they had read the book I Love You Forever to their children, and if they had not, to go ahead and sit down. And so the ones that were standing had all things in common of not feeling they had a creative bone in their body, and yet they read this story, I Love You Forever. Well, in I Love You Forever, if you don't know the story, the mother sings a song to her little boy, and it's I love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. So I said, how many of you have, if you've not put a melody to those words, please sit down. No one sat down. They all said that they had put a melody to those words. And so a few of them, I asked them to share the melody, and they were all unique melodies. So I said, you wrote a melody, you created a song, even though you didn't write the words, you created a song. So I just think it's a misnomer that some of us believe that we don't have a creative bone in our body.
Yes, I totally do agree with you on that. That's kind of funny. When I was a kid, I used to babysit my sister, who's 6 years younger. And after we saw Babes in Toyland, she always wanted me to sing the song from Babes in Toyland to her. And I think I shared with you the last time we talked that I totally can't carry a tune, but she liked my singing.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. So I did sing to her, but I couldn't actually remember the words to the song. So I made up my own.
Yeah.
And just, kind of just made it up as I went along.
That's awesome.
And she didn't know. So for like years and years, she was trying to find the song that I sang to her.
That's great. Oh, yes. I love that story, Kate. That's great. Yeah, you were writing a song, Hey, as a jazz singer, one of the things I love about jazz is it's impromptu. And so the pressure, I work best under pressure. So the pressure of having to remember the notes and the songs and not sing it the same way twice. Sometimes I forget the words, and I will like make them up and stuff, or I'll go into scatting, and really scatting, that's all it is like I can't remember the words. So, zippity doo dah, just you throw out the little da 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 doo da, and and no one cares. They love to be entertained, and that's really what you're there for. And it's fun for the band because they don't know what's going to happen, and they like the pressure. And so that's one of the things I love about jazz is the impromptu-ness of it.
Yeah, and some people don't realize that they're being creative in just their normal everyday life, like the lady that has, like the beautiful garden, or
yes.
Does this wonderful dinner.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And, people want to put labels on is this art or is this not art? And I'm like, let's not even go there, because then that's limiting. That's a limiting belief. It's like, I've got to be an artist, or And I have found people who really are artists are somewhat inhibited by calling themselves artists, and others who really wouldn't qualify as like a professional artist or whatever, I'm like, well, I'm an artist, you know. And I just think, let's just put that label aside and talk about creativity if we can, and how exactly when you're plating your dinner, when you're adding spices to something and throwing in something for the first time that you haven't used, or trying to mix up a few things. I have another story. So I decided I was going to get really creative in the kitchen, and I wanted to make an orange chicken. And I'm vegetarian now, but back in the day when, and I wanted to make an orange flavored chicken. And I looked in, and I'm not a big drinker, but we had a cabinet with some alcohol in it. And I don't know why we had this orange liqueur, but the color of it was blue, and I didn't really consider that would cause a problem. So to this day, my kids go, "Oh, remember Mom's blue chicken?" Because it literally turned the chicken blue. And so it did. I was being very creative, but it tasted
blue
good.
Orange chicken.
Blue orange chicken. So sometimes those little creative experiments don't work out, but you know, it's always worth a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we talk about risk, that's the thing I love about children. I used to teach kids in the morning and then adults in the evening. And the kids in the morning, and I know this because I've got 9 grandchildren, but the kids in the morning would just be ravenously going through paper and paint and pencils and everything. I need more, and creating without any fear or thought of, you know, how is this going to be perceived by my peers. And then at night, and it was so much fun. It just was so much joy, which is what it's supposed to be about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then by nighttime, you know, I go and I would have like a half a dozen or a dozen adult students around the room in a semicircle or circle, and I would go up to one, and they laid down a big juicy stroke of paint, and I go, "Wow, that's so cool! And look how, you know, free that is, and how much emotion you put in there. That's great." And they add more, and then I go around to each person, and I would often find an adult who's just afraid to put that paint on there. It's not brain surgery. I promise you, no one's going to die. It's only paint, and you can always paint over if you don't like it, or wipe it off. It's oil paint, or get another canvas or a piece of paper, whatever it is. It's, you know, just do it. And then I come back around to that first person who had that juicy, luscious, you know, impromptu brushstroke, and it'd be all wiped out, just like it hadn't even, just feathered and painted over, and I'm like, "What happened?" And they're like, I wasn't sure, so I just kept." And they're just so timid, and
Yeah, am I doing this right?
we care too much about how it's going to be perceived. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we miss out. And I think, yeah, mistakes are our best friend. Some of my best mistakes have taught me so much. I paint in, this is an oil painting behind me, but I also paint in pastels. And I actually, my aunt, when she passed away, my cousin gave me her box of pastels. And there were so many, and I've added on to them since then. I've got buckets of pastels, and boxes, I should say, separated according to color. But I would pick out a few sticks and lay them down, and I just get lost in the whatever I was working on, and I went to grab a dark blue, and I grabbed a purple by mistake, and I put it on there and went, "Oh, I that's not blue." And then I went, "Oh, I like it." And so I started incorporating purple into the shadows of a lot of my landscapes after that. And that's one of those serendipitous kind of mistakes that you want to see happen. And if you're afraid and too uptight and just caught up in the whole, it's got to be perfect thing, you miss out on all that serendipitous creativity and how it creates inspiration, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I had a friend who was also a client, and she's a graphic designer, and she's very good at what she does, but she's also a fine artist, except for that she's never really satisfied with what she does. And she, I guess she felt that she needed to stay very strictly within certain forms and rules. Maybe because that's part of graphic design, I don't know. And I saw the process that she went through, kind of being dissatisfied with what she was doing, and then realizing that, you know, fitting everything into these rules that she had wasn't art. And, you know, letting herself go.
Yeah, it was choking her creativity.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it was kind of amazing to see that process going on in her head. And
she figured it out though, right?
Yeah, she did figure it out. Even if I thought I could, she's one of those persons that you never could tell that to. She'd have to
find it on her own,
discover it for herself, because like, as I said, she's a friend, and one day she was supposed to follow me someplace and in the car.
Yeah.
But she started first. And I said,
how's that?
You know, that following thing doesn't work if you start first. But that's her, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm challenged when people makes even a suggestion. You know, recently someone said, "Oh, I should put a boat in that painting." I'm like, well, if I'd wanted a boat in it, I would have put it in it. And I've had people say, "Oh, you know, you should paint this or that," and I'm like, "No, that's your painting. I've got more than enough ideas to last 3 lifetimes." So maybe you're feeling that because maybe you need to paint that. But or I'll make a joke. I'll say, well, maybe I should put an airplane in it. I don't know. You know, we'll see.
Well, it is. I think we all kind of get sensitive like that, especially with the creative side of ourselves, because, you know, it's like when my son was in high school, one of the English teachers had them write an opinion essay. And then she gave him a bad grade on his opinion essay because she didn't agree with his opinion.
See?
And you know, that's
personal. You know, the thing is like, if it's either self-expression or it's not. So if I am doing a commission for you and you say, I want these colors, and I will charge extra to match your sofa, but you know, I mean, if you're going to pay me, then sure, I'll match your sofa. But then it's no longer self-expression. You understand? I'm actually trying to match an image that's in your head, which is nearly impossible. I'll get as close as I can, but it almost comes down to doing, you know, those police portraits of the, you know, did he have big eyes or big nose, or, you know, it's not really your expression. You're trying to match somebody else's imagery. And so that's where, you know, and that lies the rub, is that, no, I'm expressing myself. And so I have a need to put these colors together. I have a need to have this serene image, you know, sans people anywhere, you know, pre-Adamite even, you know, and this is my expression. And so, you know, you can suggest all day long, but I'm going to do what I want to do, unless you're paying me to do otherwise and I'm in agreement with that. Then that's a whole nother conversation, you know.
Yeah, and it isn't, you know, like sometimes, okay, like with my group, the Creative Friends group, I try to be open to art that I don't like, because I think everybody needs to express themselves, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like those, pictures that are really angry, and it just doesn't resonate with me.
Sure.
But if that's what that person needs to express, and I can look at it and say, boy, that is a really good picture of anger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I was in Chicago. It was, oh gosh, might have been in the early 80s. I was in Chicago, and I walked into an art gallery, and it had these sculptures, and oh my gosh, Kate, they look so real. And I think they were ceramic, but they were all people who looked like they were being tortured.
Oh,
And it was so disturbing. But I mean, the work in itself was beautifully done, but the expressions on these people's faces, like heads sticking out of a wall, looking like on the other side of the wall they were being tortured.
mm-hmm.
And so it was very disturbing. I mean, my blood pressure went up. I think I was even perspiring. And I walked around, and there was a huge one in the middle of the room that was, it was like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that, but it was kind of like going into in a carnival, where you go into in the house of horrors, and you come out and you're like, oh wow, I survived that. And I was disturbed. It was strong work. It was good work. I think it was important work, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I was glad that I experienced it. I was glad I survived it. But there were some images I wish I hadn't seen. And sometimes I see art. Sometimes I hear music. Sometimes I read things that I wish I hadn't, because it just kind of almost like.
Or you just wouldn't want to do it again, or it's not the kind of thing you want to do every day.
No, well, it just kind of, they linger with you, and you have to kind of you have to process, why is this bothering me so much?
Yes, it's like, a certain movie you might see.
Exactly.
Like you can say, that was a really good movie. I never want to see it
again. Never want to see it again. Exactly. And that is art, and there are different levels of what some people would call good art and bad art. And I know what resonates with me, and I know when something feels like it's raised the bar for me, and I get excited. And others, I feel I would use the word pedestrian. Like, obviously, this is like student grade, but for that person, I don't know. I've juried a lot of art shows over my lifetime, and I'm surprised at how often I miss the mark on what I think is going on in that artist's mind when they created what they created. And for instance, one piece I juried, and I let it in the show, but I was talking to the artist and said, it kind of comes across as misogynist. It's not very respectful to women. And after talking to him, I was in tears, because it was really about his wife's labor with their first child. So I was way off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can never know. And some artists, even we have a local artist here who is the sweetest, most gentle spirited man, much loved by people who know him. If they don't know him, they see his work and think it is like a nightmare. Like, he's painting a nightmare, and it's kind of spooky. His colors, his renderings, he's highly sought after. He's very, very popular because everybody has gotten, he used to be a milkman, but his work itself, you would never guess. It's not for everybody. But he himself, once you get to know him, then you fall in love with his work. You realize that he's almost, and I don't mean immature, but he's almost childlike in his sense of play and wonder. And he's just the most adorable. His name is Mel, and he's just, fabulous.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to know the artist and their perspective and personality to really appreciate their work.
Oh, yeah.
I know someone like that as well, that
Yeah.
a lot of people see their art and they don't get it or don't really appreciate it.
Right.
And then if they know the artist, they're more likely to.
Right. Well, I have an artist friend who right now is doing a lot of work about politics.
Mm.
And I tried to steer away from politics. I live with a man who is very heavily into politics. And so all day long, I hear enough about it. I don't want to.
No, it's
I don't
hard
want to
not
carry
to.
it. Yeah. And I don't want to carry it into the studio. And I don't have to. I want to create pieces, because this is me, that give you a little respite from that. But she paints these things, and some of them are humorous, and it's important work. I think it's really important work that she's doing, but it's not me, and we're all so different, and that's what makes humanity so beautiful, is the difference that we have, and the similarities.
Yeah. So we could probably talk, for hours on this, but they are meant to be relatively short.
Sure.
So before we go, though, let's try to give a few things that help us get inspired if we're wanting to do something and just not feeling like we're there yet.
Right. I actually have some things that I prepared for you.
Okay.
A couple of quotes just to lay the groundwork, and one is Picasso said that inspiration does exist, but it must find us working. And another one is by one of my favorite living artists, Chuck Close, and he said, amateurs wait for inspiration, and the rest of us just get to work. So my challenge for people who have a desire to be creative is just do it. Just get it. Sometimes you need to, and I did this when I was younger, is set a deadline for yourself, just a self-imposed deadline of, by this many days, I'm going to create this amount of whatever it is. You write this many poems or create this many paintings, and not worry about whether they're good or not. Just, you got a deadline, and I'm going to paint 5 paintings this week. Well, that's like almost one a day. You can't, well, you can. I created some of my best work in 20 minutes, but that's, I say also, it took me 50 years to learn how to paint like that. So, but still, don't worry about the quality. Just worry about the expression and getting it done. And that will get you into this motion of creativity, whether it's writing a song or writing a poem or working on a manuscript or painting or drawing or sculpting or whatever. Oh, it could be a craft even. One of the things, and then mix it up. That's another tip, is beyond that, mix it up a bit. One of the things I do is, let's see if I can get it in here, is some art journaling. And so this is 3-dimensional.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a little 3-dimensional journal. And so let's see. Hold on. Like, there's one image of.
Okay.
Yeah, and some images of just little words and images. I mean, these are actual. These shoes over here are painted. They look like they're cut out, but they're actually painted. And then another thing that I'll do sometimes, and I made this with my son, but we do 3-dimensional pieces, found object art. This is an actual clock. It's got some personal pieces that have been collected, throughout my lifetime. So sometimes just getting my hands on something that isn't paint will keep the creative juices moving, but I won't feel like, oh God, I'm so tired of painting, which I do get tired of painting sometimes. I'll tell you a story real quick, and then, we can wrap this up. But I was doing a show in Seattle, and it was an important show for me. at the time. And I needed one more piece, and my arms were tired, my head was tired, my feet were tired, I was tired. And I was not inspired at all. I was not in the mood to paint at all. But I knew I had to get this one painting done before I got everything to the framers. And I went up to the studio and I'm just going to dig in, I'm just going to do it. And I ended up painting a piece in 20 minutes. And it ended up selling for 3 times more than anything else had sold at that time in that size. It was purchased by British Petroleum and put in their collection. And it ended up winning several national and international awards and was published in 1 art book and 3 art magazines. And
Wow.
I was not in the mood to paint. I was not inspired. I just got in there and did the work. And to this day, people say that's their favorite painting. It speaks to them the most. 20 minutes.
Yeah, so, but as you said, it's probably the accumulated,
right.
You know.
But magic happens, is my point. Magic can happen, but you can't wait for, well, I feel like it, or I don't feel like it. Has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you can't wait for inspiration just to come and fall in your lap. You have to start doing, and then, you know, the inspiration, idea, you know, whatever comes.
Yep. It's like shooting an arrow, you know. It'd be, you know, you've got to hit the mark, but the feathers are the emotions, the feeling of inspiration. But it's really the will, which is the shaft, that gets the mark, that you know, that points that arrow in the right direction.
There are some things that I do that I think are kind of I don't know, self-care that help to, you know, make me more likely to be inspired. It's like I love sunsets, so I go and see a beautiful sunset on the water, or go out in nature, go for a hike, see, you know, beautiful natural things.
My grandbabies will do that for me too. You know, it just bubble you up with joy. The things that bring you joy are very important. Also, meditation is very important. Taking good care of your body is very important. But how many artists do we know who are very successful who didn't do any of those things? You know, so I think it's really good advice. And that you don't have to be a starving artist, and you don't have to be a suffering artist. You know,
I think that's a myth. I mean, maybe artists don't make a lot of money, some of them, but they seem to be some of the happiest people that I know. I don't think, for the most part, that they fit that image of being tortured and, you know, because I think self-expression is, you know, really fundamental for good mental health. So I think people that express themselves more are in general happier.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Okay. So any last words on inspiration before we go?
Just, you know, whatever it is that's nagging in the back of your mind of what it is, I want to write a book, I want to paint, I want to, you know, join a class, get together with another group of people, have an accountability partner, someone who can say, will you call me tomorrow and see if I actually did this? Those are things that are really helpful.
Yes. I think in whatever you're doing, whether it's, you know, something artistic, or, you know, if you're a sports player, or, you know, whatever you want to accomplish, that's good advice.
Yeah.
So thank you. I enjoyed talking to you once again, and I hope we said something that inspired somebody.
That's all I got.
Yeah. So I'm going to say goodbye for now and talk to you again.
All righty. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.